Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And we're back.
You know, you're having too much fun over there.
We are having a lot of fun. Well, I'm here next to the judge.
Coach Graham.
And Miss Smith, actually. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to get back to a question I had at the other segment we talked about right there. You know, we were talking about obviously being able to go through and evaluate from an appraisal perspective, but we also talked about a little bit, you know, about let's say you have a business and that business actually has income coming in. Let's say it's
like a restaurant,
like a restaurant or a hotel,
parking lot.
And so parking lot, as Joe was saying,
garage.
And then you end up having. You know, then you end up wanting to get it. Eminent domain comes in, they want to take it away, and you got future earnings that are now impacted. How was all that considered in this process?
Well, frankly, it's considered in the same way it would if you wanted to sell the building. That's the approach that should be taken. So if you wanted to sell your building, you're not going to sell it to somebody who's going to pay you in advance for 50 years worth of income, right? Because then they're paying you in advance, and they're not going to make any money because they've given you all their income for the next 50 years. So you actually have to value it based on the income stream, based on a capitalization rate, based on the net present value of that money, and based on a history of what is actually performing. You know, what that property is actually producing.
But I don't want to sell.
Being devil's advocate, I don't want to sell though. You see, so I understand on the one side you say if I was a willing seller, I would have to approach the market with the normal way of selling my property, right? But if I'm an unwilling seller, somebody who had, you know, I've built this business, I've got a revenue stream, et cetera, and I'm an unwilling seller, I think that changes things a bit, though. That's my side of things.
Well, that's your side of things, but it's not the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't say that's okay.
I understand you feel that way. Here comes the judge, but we don't care.
The Constitution requires the condemning authority to pay the market value of property. Market value is defined as the value that a willing buyer would pay to a willing seller on that given day.
But neither being under duress, and this is certainly under duress.
That is correct.
And that's why you don't consider the duress, because market value doesn't consider the duress. And the Constitution says that you're entitled to market value for your property taken as a result of condemnation.
But you're taking away one of the big things, duress.
Yeah, there you go.
So, with my obvious, like of the government in general, if I got that letter and I'm dealing with this situation, I'm saying, man, I want to fight this with everything I've got. I want to get the most value out of it because I'm with Chris. I'm going, I built a business here or whatever else. I've got income stream coming in, and I have zero desire to sell. How do I go about, hiring the best attorney to,
What a segue. One of our common recurring themes is always get a professional.
Right. Work with a professional. So what questions am I asking to make sure I am getting the absolute best attorney in this process to make sure I get the best deal for myself in this process?
Well, there's three things I think you should look at when you're talking to attorneys. Number one, do you get along with them? Because you're going to be in litigation with them, which is a stressful situation, and your personalities have to blend. And, as an attorney and a 20-year plus attorney, I have the luxury of getting to pick my clients a little bit. So I get to pick who I like to work with. I don't take on clients that are going to drive me nuts and make it a difficult situation.
In other words,
you're
you're
out.
Good.
You are.
That's it. I am out. She's like, I am not representing Kelso.
But you should do the same thing. You should find a lawyer that when you interview them, that you have a rapport and a trust in them so that you will listen to their advice. That's number one. Number two, you want somebody that works in this area. This is a complicated area of law. It's not rocket science necessarily. I mean, I couldn't build the ship to the moon, but it is still a very intricate area of law, and not everybody can do it. Not everybody has the experience and knows what to look for to do it. So you really want somebody that has been in the business. And then the third thing you need to do is make sure that they have a history or some confidence with the process or the project that's going on, because that's always helpful too. If they're aware of the area, they're aware of the project or the type of condemnation. For example, the difference might be somebody might be really good at pipelines, but they haven't done roadways, or vice versa. And so there are a lot of them out there, a lot of attorneys out there that specialize in condemnation, and they've done it all. But there's also a handful that really focus their condemnation experience in a very technical area.
Interesting.
I'm going to ask Frank the same question. Is basically what would you look for with an appraiser? And I think if you're going to go protest something, you certainly should get an appraiser involved because you're the one that's going to set up valuation on that person's behalf. What should they look for from you?
Again, geographic competency is a real factor. Experience, as the judge said, with the particular type of property, with the particular type of condemnation that's going on. Years in business, I think, definitely help. They've been around the block. And I think it's also very positive if they've had an opportunity to work on both sides, both for the condemning organization and for the property owner.
I would also add with appraisers, condemnation law is all about the experts, and your appraiser is your expert. So you need to make sure your appraiser has the ability to communicate your position to that jury. So testifying experience and their ability to really work with people and get and explain it to people who aren't appraisers, because they're the ones making the decision. The lawyer controls the courtroom, but the appraiser controls the testimony because it's coming out of his mouth, and it is a battle of the experts.
Amen. I've learned that firsthand because we've had the opportunity over the last 5 years to work on the biggest, the third biggest, and the fourth biggest litigation case in the United States, and these all came out of the subprime mortgage meltdown. All those 20
meltdown?
What? What are we talking about? What
vaguely remember a mortgage meltdown, but those cases that came out of Wall Street with all the tranches and all the properties, we were on those cases, and it's exactly like Judge Smith says. It is a battle of experts and communication and being able to boil it down into layperson's terms, even though it's complicated, is a real plus.
Well, let me ask you.
I just got a text from Bill Napick, and he's a host of a radio show later on, actually on Real Estate Matters.
Yeah,
That's Real Estate Matters at 1:00 on this radio station. And he wrote me just now, and he said, "What would the judge do if she were in that position?"
Oh my!
Of being condemned?
Absolutely.
I would immediately
hire myself.
Yeah, I would. I probably would. I know I get along with me.
Most days.
But I would look at. I'd call my appraisers that I know I have a lot of confidence in, and I'd ask their opinion. Is this a fair offer? Because I don't want to spend the money on hiring experts and everything else if they really are making me a reasonable offer. If they're not, and I want to challenge it, I'm going to challenge it every step of the way.
If here's because I really know very little about the subject, so it works well because I can just ask lots of questions. Kelsey and I own a business, and
we don't need call-ins today. We've got all our questions right here.
Right. Kelso and I own this business that we were talking about earlier, and we don't want to sell. We're happy with it. We got income coming in, and now we get this issue that the government wants to buy our property, but we want to fight it. Am I going to face if I make the government condemn the property? Do I face any fines or penalties in that process? Is there any pain for going that far with it?
You might have late night visitors.
No.
You're the county appraiser sent us over here.
The worst that can happen is if you really do lose, you could be assessed costs. You could be assessed the cost as opposed to the condemning authority. If you challenge it and you get less, and you've taken the money out of the registry of the court, you have to pay it back. Because one of the things, in order for them to take possession of the property, whatever the special commissioner's award is the value, they have to put that into the court's registry. If you're challenging the right to take, you cannot take that money out because as soon as you do, you've forfeited challenging the right to take. But you can always challenge the value. So, and you have the right to that money because that's what they've decided your property's worth. So if you take it out, and there was a case where the special commissioners gave a lot of money and then the jury took it back and the landowner actually had to return it because he had taken the money out.
Oh, dang.
And so that's some of the things that might happen.
Man, that would suck, right? Got all this money, got to give it back. Oops, they made a mistake.
So for both of you, I get my property condemned, but you know what? I want to net out as much money as I can. I really don't want to hire anybody. I want to do it myself. Well,
it's that look she just gave you. I wish the audience could see that.
I wish this was TV.
That was you're an idiot look if I ever saw it.
You chain yourself to the building and you're going to fight City Hall, and the reality is you probably cannot get through this process without some expert help.
Well, let's just say that people don't specialize in the area because it doesn't take experience to do it. I mean, every case is unique, It does take your ability to understand the differences and the nuances. It also, it makes a difference. And what's unique to your property to you might not be necessarily what makes it unique to an appraiser or a jury or in the condemnation context.
Now, the majority, and both of you can answer this also, is that the majority of cases probably they get an offer, they look at it, and it gets accepted. I think that would probably, most often, that's what occurs. Is that right?
A lot of times that happens.
And so if somebody objects to it, what's usually the time involved with going through an objection? Like the case we heard, how long was that in process?
I don't know how long it was in process, but the very first thing that happens is before the case starts, and that's the bona fide offer period that starts with the initial letter. They have to wait 30 days after they send the initial offer letter to send a final offer letter, and then they have to wait 14 days before they can file suit. And so that minimum is a 45-day process from the initial offer letter to the filing of the petition. Once that statement in condemnation or petition in condemnation is filed, the judge has to appoint the special commissioners, and it goes through the administrative phase. That also has time deadlines. You're looking at, best case scenario, I think, realistically, from the initial offer letter to the special commissioners hearing, even if everything worked like clockwork, I don't see how you could possibly get that done in less than 90 days.
And here's a hypothetical situation. You condemn a piece of land or a property of some type. They had a use for it, and then maybe the government didn't get the full funding for that use, and that property is now owned by the county or the city or whomever was the condemning authority. What can happen to that property at that point?
You can buy it back.
I give you $1, right? And all other good consideration, right?
Well, and unfortunately, that does happen from time to time, and there are provisions for it if they don't actually use it. But for the most part,
I guess the question is, could they sell it for private use at that point?
After so much time, yes, they can.
So with enough strategy in place, they actually could condemn land, not actually develop what they said they're going to do it for, and later on put it into commercial use.
They would have to hold it for quite a while, but yes, they can.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a good question. Is there a holding pattern? Would they? You mentioned they have to hold it for a little while. Don't know it. Don't know if that's something, but is that like a 10-year or 20-year? Is there regulation around something like that or code around something like that?
There is, and I would, frankly, guys, I
think
I need my property code.
Where's that clerk when you need her?
And frankly, I just haven't dealt with this recently, and so I'm going off of memory. But as I recall, there is a holding period that they hold it for, and I'm not sure exactly what it is. I want to say it's 10 years. But I don't know that off the top of my head, but I know exactly where to find it in the property code.
Well,
it's one of those things is we don't want to ever get too technical on you because we obviously know there's a lot of code out there to read, and we don't necessarily want to go through and read some of that code. But it's interesting stuff, that we've got out there. One of the things that we're going to be doing, we are coming up against a break again. We've got Bruce actually who has a question. He's asked a question right when we come back after the break. But if you do have a question, you can call in. You can reach us at 800-808-5548. You can text us as well, all those individuals out there who know how to reach us on the Real Estate Rat Pack Facebook website or on our website as well. You can do so. And time flies when you're having fun. We have one more segment. Good questions. Great guest, by the way, about eminent domain. So
Bruce, hang on the line.
Bruce, stay there. We'll be right back with you. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.